the Two Men and a Business Continuity Plan podcast. Navigating success through uncertainty.
Hello, and welcome to the first of our podcast series, aptly named Two Men and a Business Continuity Plan, with Charlie and James. So let's find out who these two idiots are on the call today. And we're going to go to Charlie first for a brief introduction.
Yeah, so Charlie McLean, Bristol. I'm a business continuity crisis management person by trade and background, Army, Anglian Water Emergency Planning, Scottish Power Business Continuity. Then I founded Plan B Consulting 17 years ago, and also helped founded Business Continuity Training, I think about 16, 17 years ago as well. So there we are, that's me.
Award-winning
Winning.
BC organisation consultancy, but brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm James McAllister. I've been in the resilience industry for the last 40 years, 30 years in a policing environment, and then 10 years in consultancy. In the cops, I did some very interesting things, started off sort of general policing, very quickly moved into a public order environment, and then swiftly into specialist firearms and counter-terrorism for a huge amount of my career. And then towards the end, when I was getting old and tired, I moved into civil contingencies, emergency planning, and business continuity. So that's me. Now, this is the first of our podcasts, and what we thought, we would pick something nice and topical, which is how businesses need to deal with major events within the area in which they operate. Now, as we know, what do we mean by major events? Well, at the moment, we've got the Euros going on, the football tournament. There's the Asian Cup that was held in January. We've got the Olympics and Paralympics coming up in the next few weeks. We've got political party conferences going on across Europe. We've got exhibitions, conferences, political party marches. And what do you do as a business when confronted by the fait accompli of your local authority or your government saying that that event is going to be held in an area in which you have a footprint? So I'm going to start by asking Charlie, what do you think the primary issues and impacts might be when, let's say, we focus on, for the second, on the Olympics, because everybody is sort of looking forward to that in the next few weeks. What are the issues with holding such a massive global event for businesses?
I thought when I first saw the billing for this event, I saw Taylor Swift, and I thought we might maybe discuss Taylor Swift for half an hour. But not being a mad Swiftie myself, but yeah, I have been following all the stuff, and I'm in Glasgow, and we saw the 3 nights as Taylor Swift there as well. So I think big events. I think the good thing about big events is, I was just looking back some of the sort of podcasts, bulletins I wrote on various sporting events, and always when you see the Olympics, and I was going back to the Olympics in UK, you always see this. Oh, there's going to be lots of terrorist attacks. There's going to be transport chaos. There's going to be, just bad things happening. It's going to turn into real British muddle. And, once you get those events, they pass off pretty much without all these sort of doomsayers event. I was just looking at the London Olympics, and they were saying that the only sort of major event, I'm sure there's some sort of things happening behind the scenes, but the major event we heard of was a sewage flooding of a CCTV place. And actually they had a contingency plan. They got themselves up and going, and it was a sort of minor element of news. And I think with these big set piece events, like, concerts, like the Olympics, like the Euros, there's a massive amount, we know the date of them, and there's a massive amount of planning goes into them. And so on the whole, and because there's, like the Olympics, there's a template for it, so people know what they need to do, then I think on the whole, because they're so well planned, that, usually part of pretty much without event. So, I think the first thing in looking at large events is that on the whole, they're pretty well marshaled, pretty well planned. But I
Can I
think,
just grab you on that one, Charlie?
yeah,
Because yes, but are you then, because you're almost the author of your own demise with that argument, that they're all well planned and we don't need to worry about them? Because I've got a big belief that most businesses are almost in the nanny state approach. Well, the Olympic Games or a large scale event, that's the government or the local authority or somebody else's problem. And all I do is wait for them to do something if I'm affected. Because this idea where it's always somebody else's problem and they're going to solve it, surely we need to be sort of mentioning to businesses that, yes, there is, like all the major stuff. Like, I mean, a small business can't really cater for a terrorist attack. They can look at the aftermath and the impact of cordons and things like that. But it's great that they're doing that. So are you saying businesses don't bother doing anything because, like in France, Paris, and the other venues that are hosting events, or Murrayfield that's hosting Taylor Swift, they're going to do all of that?
No, I think what you do, my always argument for this is, you're a private business or you're a local authority involved in the planning. But if you're a public business or a local business, so you have to go and plan to say, how does this affect us? When we had in Glasgow, we had some clients who were there when they had the COP climate change thing on there. And, a lot of the stuff was happening outside their front door of their office. So I'm a great believer in, businesses or organizations have to look after themselves. The government is not going to look after them. Of course, they might look after them in response, but you have to have a look at to say, actually, this event's coming up. I know it's coming up. I know the Olympics are going to go up. I'm going to be in the perimeter of the cordon, or, the COP event is going to go past my front door. What you have to do then is say, a bit of a BIA. You have to do, what is the impact of this and how could this affect us? And yes, of course, hopefully the closer you are to the organization, perhaps the better the cordon or the better the kind of stopping terrorists or anybody else disrupting the event getting in. But I think you have to, how does it affect me? And then I'm a great believer in this idea of a sort of Olympic, Taylor Swift, event operating regime. So the time of this thing of COP, we will operate our business in a different way. We'll have more people working from home. We'll not wear our lanyards. We'll close the office. We'll do whatever we do to make sure that we have looked after our staff and managed that event. So I think you have that operating regime. And you have to say, well, actually, yes, of course, there might be some good stuff in there done by the government, but you need to also have a look at and say what can go wrong. So I think you have to look after yourself, but you have to also take into context of the work the government does.
Yeah. What about, I mean, some of the stats? Once again, I know I'm a bit obsessed with the Olympics, although I'm a massive rugby fan, as are you. But
Yeah.
if you look at some of the stats around cyber attacks, because I know I'm also a big believer in, is the big terrorist thing actually going to happen? The drone attack, the traditional attack. Well, I think, the fact that the French government, for example, have invoked special laws to put the military onto the streets and this, that, and the other. They're probably pretty capable in that area. But if you look at 2021, this is from Cisco, the Tokyo Games, there was 450 million cyber attacks, and they're estimating that for this games, and this doesn't just affect the sponsors or the Olympic Committee, this is businesses, this is people who are attending the event, buying tickets, even sort of global, who get the phishing email and then get hooked. So if it's going to be 8 times bigger, this is probably going to be the biggest focused cyber attack so far in history. And it may be attacking things like infrastructure, ability of planes, power grids, things like that. What do you think? Do you think that's probably the biggest threat?
Well, I think if I was planning the Olympic, I was just doing some reading last night on the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea. And there's a brilliant story in Wired. I like the stories on Wired about how during the Olympic ceremony, and I think that Wired said it was the Russians, GRU did it. They basically took down all the servers of the Olympic Committee there, and during the opening ceremony, all the screens went off, all the ticket machines didn't go off, the entire infrastructure was taken down by Olympic destroyer malware. And I think Wired always tell the story well of how they rallied around and they managed to get the infection out, and they managed to get at least some stuff up and going for the press corps to do, because they were to do their reports after the opening ceremony. And there was a massive attack on there, but they managed to basically repel it. No, I think, if you look at the Olympics in context with the Israeli war, with the Israelis, I think, are turning up with a team. I think the Russians are turning up with a team, because I think they do as a neutral, but there is nothing stopping the anti-Israelis or the Russians themselves, or alleged Russians, that they might attack the event. So I do think there is a greater chance there was the Olympic Committee of having a cyber attack there. I'm not sure there's any more likelihood of a attack on national infrastructure, because I think if you think about it, the under NATO Article 5, that if anyone starts attacking the infrastructure, then it's an attack on NATO. But I think you're right. Is the obfuscation, if I can say that word right, or cyber attacks means that it is quite difficult, quite a long time, with a lot of forensics, to actually prove who done it. And often nation states are busy trying to say, I'm trying to make it look like the North Koreans or the Iranians rather than the actual people who do it. So I think you're really right to have cyber attacks on Olympics. I think that would be the one thing that would worry me if I was. And drones. Let's talk about drones in a second. The one thing that will worry me.
Yeah, a client of mine for the Eurovision Song Contest 23. If you remember what happened, it was supposed to be held in the Ukraine, and then it was put up for bid. The UK said we're quite happy to host, and Liverpool won, which is obviously where I operate from. And one of my clients was within that area on the lead up to the Eurovision Song Contest, was absolutely getting bombarded. Now, unfortunately, due to an open printer, they received a ransomware attack, which crippled them for a short amount of time. By short, I mean actually 3 weeks, but it could have been considerably longer. They did get back up and running again, and there were no outward impact on their customers and tenants. However, that was all about, politically, you're hosting an event that was in Ukraine, you're supporting the Ukraine, and the hacktivists, Russian-based hacktivists, it was more political than it was criminal. So it might not just be, I mean, you look at the sponsors, Airbnb and all those other people. I mean, imagine Airbnb getting an attack, because Airbnb only operate through the web. It's not as though you can ring up and book your room. So, I mean, I think it's quite interesting that the Olympics might be the focus, but depending on who's upsetting who at the time, with any state sponsored, it might be a wider strike, because that will get some absolutely phenomenal press coverage. I don't know what you think about that.
I think that's, I think that comes back to my operating regime. If you're Airbnb and one of the sponsors in that, I would make sure that I had doubled my firewalls, make sure I've got 37 times more techies on you on 24/7 sitting there to respond, because we know if we're key sponsors, setting ourselves up as a target, and so it'd be embarrassing for us to go down. So you need to actually make sure that you are ready to respond. I think also you have to make sure that there are the headline sponsors who probably got lots of money to spend on this thing, but if you're a smaller sponsor, you may not have so much money, but you are putting your head above the parapet. So I think if you're seen to be associated with an event which can be politically controversial, I think you need to think about your operating regime, say, actually, you know, we may be targeted just like your company in the Eurovision.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you had something interesting around drones, because I think that's a fascinating evolution of warfare and to use as a weapon. Because, I mean, any numpty can go on any website, buy a drone, and theoretically, as long as it's got a payload, do something nasty with it. What's your, certainly from an ex-military perspective, what's your...
Well, I think my take on that, I'm sure when in your former career you spent time poking down drains and looking under culverts and up trees and whatever, looking for bombs. So you can actually pretty say that if the troop of colour goes down this road or the Olympics go through this thing, I can be pretty sure there is no bomb on that bit. But actually, with a drone, then you put a payload drone. Is actually then a drone can turn up at any time. So you can clear that route to your heart's content, and then someone flies up a drone and crashes it into, you know, a car or a group of people. And no, I am sure that the drone jamming technology has got pretty good, and I'm sure there'll be lots of. I suspect if you look carefully, you'll see lots of wires and antennae and people with backpacks and all that sort of stuff. But you have seen from Ukraine that there is an arms race against drones of being able to take them down by electronic warfare. I have seen drones or heard of them where they're actually fly by wire. So they put a wire out the back of them, and that's a 4K wire, and actually that just pays out there, so you can't jam them.
Ah, okay.
You can't jam them because they're actually fly by wire, so there's no jamming. And you know that there's technologies out there, and it's not very difficult, I think, to get ones that pay payload. So payload there. So I think it makes it a lot more difficult if you're the police or your bodyguards or you're just protecting a route. Is you can't say that is clear because someone just flies in a drone later. Even flying a hefty drone and just crash it into the crowd is not going to do you much good. It would be interesting. I think it'd be really interesting to have a look in the background and have a look see if you can see actually anti-drone stuff there. But you know, small drones, you can actually take it in your pocket and then you can go 300 yards outside the stadium, then fly it into the stadium. So, you know, it doesn't need to be a huge drone that goes from miles away, which, you know, interceptor missiles or something. But even interceptor missiles you see in Ukraine actually cause lots of casualties because they blow up and then all the bits come down. So I think drones as a target is a very interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's a watch this space really on that. Right, let's get more back to sort of ground. What about economically? Because big events are brilliant. I mean, you go to, I mean, I go all over the place. I was at the Tottenham to watch the European rugby finals. And for the European rugby finals and for Tottenham and for England Rugby Union and for the businesses that sell food, kebabs, scarves, rugby apparel is great. But in that cordon area, that these massive events, no matter what they are, I mean, I've been involved in political party conferences, MTV awards, Mobo awards in my policing career, and there's a big cordon stuck on. And really, the businesses that don't have a direct connection to the event always lose out. What can they do then?
Go on holiday.
Yeah, I mean, is it about
tough,
changing your business model? Is business continuity just about business continuity? Or is it about, because I think it's I think you look at your business model, COVID's a primary example. There were businesses that withstood COVID because their business model was flexible enough to withstand COVID. Do you think business continuity should be used more holistically when you're looking at things that are coming up in the future? We could do Kodak wet film and evolution into digital and the way they didn't see it. But do you think for those short-term events, businesses need to be, rather than let's shut down for that time. Do you think they need to think, can we work differently?
I think the you're bringing it onto the resilience v business continuity argument. I think it's more of a, maybe it's semantics. It's more of a more of a resilience issue, and to say, actually, can we just close down for 3 weeks and actually, all right, we're going to lose some money, but, or are we going to pivot our business into something else that can support that? Or, maybe you shouldn't have bought a shop just outside the Manchester venue, which has always had political conferences once every 4 years. I think there is some opportunities there. I think it's just recognizing it and actually thinking enough in advance, and not sort of burying your head in the sand and hope it goes away. And it's back to my operating regime, is to think of, if you can pivot your business and you're a barber's and you could, you can do something else in that space, or you can sell ice creams out the front because, you could do that. I think it is a little, that is a little bit of a sort of more business issue. But I think coming into the resilience piece, I do think it is a little bit resilience is recognizing instance, say, actually, how am I going to cope with it? And can my business flexible enough? Or is my thinking flexible enough to actually say, well, we are a barber shop, we're not going to get any business here, so let's actually go and sell ice creams for the 2 weeks because it's a nice summer, there's going to be lots of footfall, and let's sell ice creams because we're not going to get any haircuts. Or
Okay, because I'm like you, if you're stuffed and you're going to be trapped within a certain area and you can't do your normal job. I mean, I was in Liverpool when we had the big giants came over a number of occasions. There was a massive cordon because these giants are mechanical beasts, automatons driven by human beings, but you have to close massive areas because they're dangerous. And people like, I remember one Quick Fit, for example, in a certain area, because you couldn't get cars in and out. They can't fit exhaust and tires if you're in a cordoned area. And this event went on for a number of days. It wasn't as though we threw on a cordon because of the danger to those people in that area. It was, well, for tourism, the giants were really important. But I mean, a big impact, and they've got to think about how they're going to do that. What about supply chain in and out of? I mean, you imagine big events. I mean, certainly where you live. Thinking about where you live and up in Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh, the big events, supply chain in and out on those occasions.
Yeah, you hope the local authority do their planning properly, and they let that open from 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. You hope that they've done their planning and let those events come in. So, I think sometimes it's maybe the big huge events are not the ones to worry about because they've got the detailed planning. It's maybe the smaller events, the running races and the sort of marathons, and where they haven't, it's not big money spinners. They're more kind of smaller events done by volunteers, and those are the sort of events that you can have. You can have the impact as that, and maybe there isn't the planning infrastructure there as well. I don't know how much Martin's Law coming in is going to affect that. It's going to make more planning. That's more on the security front than the kind of supply chain, but I think that's going to add an extra dimension to these events as well, is making sure there's further planning, which could, I think planning is good. However, the more planning you do, the better, I think.
Yeah, as long as the people you've got doing the planning are actually any good.
Well, yes.
Because if you look at, for example, I mean, on this very subject, lot of cities that would normally have quite a big emergency planning department. I'll give you Liverpool's a primary example. They went from 8 to 2.
Yeah.
This is the issue, and this takes me right back to my initial question to you, Charlie. Is how much reliance do you place on government, the central organizational, and how much really should be down to business? Because I've worked with businesses where it was not that they'll take care of that, and there was a sort of a misapprehension that the government or the central controller, or in this case, sort of, Taylor Swift at Murrayfield, for example, because I know you're, as you mentioned, you're a bit of a Swiftie, but they're going to look after it. Well, no, they're not.
Yeah. Well, I think, if a business doesn't see those things coming, maybe that's a more fundamental problem with the business, and understanding. Yeah, there is a bit of a kind of attitude of waiting for government to do things, but haven't we been around long enough to say that actually governments are not always massively competent, and so that do you trust them to sort it out, or do you take your own contingency plans to do it, just in case whatever doesn't cater for you in the way you want it to be done? So I think business continuity is all around about that horizon scanning and identifying the subjects. It's not a surprise the Olympics are going to come up. They don't suddenly come up in 6 weeks. Go, oh, well, I didn't know it was in Paris. Well, that's a bit of a turn up. No, they're there for years. So you need to do your horizon scanning. You need to see what are the events that's coming up in my city, which are going to affect my business or my organization, and plan accordingly. And also, often local authorities and the planners will do open events. There's lots and lots of information. It's just a matter of you going out there and not being complacent, saying, oh, they'll do it, sort it all out for me. And you have to take responsibility for your own organization. I think that's an important sort of what we kind of preach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know business continuity into organizational resilience or operational resilience. I mean, I like the holistic package that business continuity done properly caters for lots of things around the periphery of business continuity. And I think,
is it a state of mind?
Well, here we go. Let's get started on. But is it a state of mind? When I'm working with clients, I'm very much about, if your business continuity can't help everybody, because sometimes the business model is so restricted in what they do and how they do it, and they're not prepared to be any flexible in the way they work, that BC won't work. And I think, as you're quite right, it's realizing the impact, because impact's the right word. What is going to be the impact? Virtual world, shut your eyes, imagine some of these reasonable worst case scenarios happening, connected with whatever it is that's coming up, and then think it through. So in some final words, Charlie, what would you say if you were going to have a big event in your footprint of where you operate and do business? What would you advise businesses to think about, or what should they do?
I think identify it early. Look at for what advice and guidance is out there. There's often all the plans and stuff are available. Don't bury your head in the sand, but go and have a look at what those things are doing. Think about how it can impact you, whether there's riots, whether there's cyber attacks, whether it's, I don't know, problems with the infrastructure, whether it's all your staff will want to go off and watch it, whatever the impacts. Think about the impacts on your organization. What does it mean to your business, your business, the way you do business? And if it's going to impact it severely, is there anything else I can do in the meantime to change myself around or benefit from it? And I think that last bit of then operating and planning for a whatever operating regime during that time. So we're going to operate our business in a different way. If that means having more techies on because we could have a cyber attack, or it means sending all our staff home and closing the office, doesn't really matter. But you're operating your business in a different way, which caters for the risks associated with the business. So that's what keep an eye out for drones as well. But that's what I would try and suggest businesses do.
Okay, brilliant. Well, time has escaped us. We've come to the end of our first ever podcast. What I'd like to suggest is, to anybody listening, to all those lovely people who've joined in, that Charlie and I, during this series, will be discussing current events and issues that are hitting the business continuity and the wider resilience world. But if you've got anything that you would like us to debate and discuss during the podcast, then please drop us a line, and those details will be available at the end of the podcast. So, Charlie, I know you're a very busy person, as am I. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. And I'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, I'll catch you on the next one then. And thanks very much for listening. Till next time.